Retail employees of Reddit, what are your Black Friday horror stories? Story 1, a simple one, not a horror story, but funny. I managed a Radio Shack store in a mall. An old lady came in with her walker for a new battery for her cordless phone, completely oblivious to what day it was. She asked me if the mall was always so busy. Story 2, we'll start with a small one. I was working in a video store and we marked down absolutely everything, including our selection of hundreds of used movies to insane degrees. I mean 50 or more in most cases. Used movies were practically giveaways. Among the usual mobs were this guy and his wife who walked in with a box of those giant professional grade trash bags. They proceeded to fill up 4 of these trash bags. At one point, they were just going through the used bins and throwing things in there. Naturally, then when they got to the register, they had quite a few doubles. Every time they would hit a double, they'd remove it. Because of the sheer volume of movies, they had a tough time keeping up with everything and were taking forever to check out. Luckily, my manager came up and, acknowledging the increasingly angry lines of people behind them, told the couple they can either buy everything they have in the bags regardless of whether it was a double or leave. After some arguments, the husband eventually grabbed the bags and appended them, spilling the DVDs on the floor right in front of the register. They then left. The best part, customers started to go after the movies on the floor like vultures before we could get to them. Story 3, I ran an electronics department in a large retail store and was a veteran to Black Friday. My team always had everything under control. We had tickets for everything that would sell out quickly. We knew exact numbers and where everything was, and had signs for lineups for hourly deals. We were always prepared and never had an issue. One year, the district manager decided to observe our store during Black Friday. She stopped by my department in the thick of it to see how things were going on my end. It was insanely busy, of course, but we had everything managed. She was carrying a piece of paper which she told me had some unadvertised markdowns for old inventory. This was news to me. She glanced at it, grabbed my phone, and made a store-wide announcement that we had JVC digital camcorders marked down to $49, regular price $199. As she was making the announcement, I stood there with my jaw open. A sense of fear came over me. I knew the model that was just marked down, and we did have it in inventory. The problem was, we only had 4, the store was packed and a fast-moving zombie horde of shoppers immediately swamped my department from all sides. It was some Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. As the horde swept over my department, I saw my district manager hightail it out of there. I have never been in more fear for my life. Story 4, my first Black Friday. I was working at a Walmart. I was assigned to be one of the employees that would cut open the plastic on the pallets which contained our merchandise, which were all on the floor basically. As I readied box cutter, I got shoved by a customer and I fell right on it and sliced my hand open. After getting through that and patching it up, I came out on the floor and promptly got punched in the face when I picked up a DVD on the ground. A customer apparently wanted it. Black Friday, I have witnessed 2 people fist fight over a God toaster. Story 5, back in my poor college days when I worked at Walmart, we had a fight break out over a bike. Fists were thrown and there was some blood. Eventually one guy got a hold of it and managed to get away from the crowd. He rode the bike out of the store to flee his pursuers without paying. Story 6, I worked at Walmart for 4 years and worked all Black Fridays. I've seen a woman hit another woman in the chest with those toddler car boxes you drive in. Woman who got hit was a week or 3 post-op of open heart surgery. Lots of blood, right in front of me. No idea what happened to the woman who hit her. I do think she got the toy car, purchased it, and left. Edited for words. Story 7, I worked for 6YRS at a Johnny Rockets in a mall as a server in management. We didn't open early like the rest of the stores because we are a restaurant and, well, we don't serve breakfast. Had people shake our gate screaming that they wanted food. OT would be just me and an opener getting the chairs set out. I pointed them towards the food court and told them we didn't serve breakfast. A lady spit at me and told me, I know you have bacon, we do, in a fridge waiting to be cooked and put on a burger. Edit, not all JRs serve breakfast. Some do, some even serve beer, but my location has never been one of them. Story 8, I work back of house at a Toys R Us. I spent Black Friday taking big ticket items to the back where we just loaded them into the customer's car instead of trying to make our way to the front of the store. Apparently, someone decided it was fine to wander into the back storage room and start opening boxes to find what they wanted. Other customers saw this one do it, and then decided it was okay if they did too. Myself and the other back of house guys were busy wrestling with a really obnoxious bed set. So when I made it to the other side of our back storage, I found like 8 to 10 people just taking cases off our bays and opening them, then tossing them aside if they didn't want it. They claimed there was nothing indicating they couldn't come back there. We have 2 signs on the swinging door saying employees only and warning only authorized personnel beyond this point. Story 9, I just started retail. I still have no idea what I'm doing, and only one more shift until Black Friday. Thanks for putting the fear in me, and this thread only has 36 comments. Edit, the thread blew up, and I had a nightmare last night that the store I work at was also my high school, and I got a D for not telling a customer about the survey after they were attacked for their merchandise. So there's that. Thanks for the gold though. Story 10, an 80-year-old grandma tackled and then bear maced a woman over fleece fabric at my store. The old lady wanted a cancer pink ribbon fabric, and the woman she ultimately tackled had called ahead and ordered a bulk amount of it, because she works for a cancer organization and makes blankets for cancer patients. The woman was wheeling a cart in the store with several large bolts of the fabric in it which she had special ordered, and we put it in the cart for her so she could continue shopping. Old lady sees that this woman has all the bolts and it isn't right that she's hogging the entire stock of that particular print. The woman explains the situation and that she in fact special ordered these, and that the reason she was coming in on Black Friday to purchase them is because they were a major Black Friday promotion at 60 off. The old lady continues to yell at the poor woman. The woman very calmly keeps trying to reassure her that she is not taking any of the store stock, and that she makes blankets for dying women with breast cancer. She is a very sweet store regular who pays out of pocket for all the blankets, and so my store held the fabric for her until Black Friday, when she would come in and purchase them with her coupon. Old lady doesn't give a, whips out mace and tackles the woman. Old lady gets kicked out of the store. She would come in once every couple of months, give me the stink eye, and then rebelliously write down recipes from the home and food magazine so she wouldn't have to buy them, then she'd scurry out and come back in a few months. Story 11 Walmart story time. A couple years ago when the sales started there was a surge of people trying to get their stuff. One lady got knocked down and her pen went straight into her neck, thankfully missing the jugular. The up part is no one tried to help, they just walked over her to get their shitty deal items. An associate that saw it happen had to stand over top over her to protect her from getting trampled. When the ambulance crew arrived they had to literally shove people out of the way because no one would move people. Story 12 Around 10 years ago, I worked for Best Buy. I was hired as a seasonal employee while in college, and actually enjoyed working there most of the time. Unfortunately, Black Friday ended my enjoyment for the big box retailer. The year that the PS2 came out, I was in charge of issuing the systems to customers with vouchers, the ones who stayed all night camping out. The customers would approach me, and I kept 2 systems in my arms at a time and would go from the stockroom to the floor in order to give out each system. On one trip out of the stockroom, a gentleman early 40s approached me and proceeded to try to assist him out of my hands and run with it. As an aside, I'm no small fellow. As the immature gentleman attempted the grab and go, I simply tightened my grip and calmly said, "Your ticket first, sir." He rebutted with, "I don't have a ticket, and I don't need one, I seen this thing first, so it's mine." After a brief explanation of the voucher system, the man and his wife only seemed more angered that I refused to surrender the PS2. To really convince me to give him the system, the gentleman then proceeded to say, "Okay, well I guess I'll have to whip you for it, perhaps of my own naivete or the adrenaline." I responded, "Sounds great, let me clock out first, and I'll meet you outside shortly." A little taken back by my response, the gentleman started to profusely apologize and even teared up, giving me some sob story over why he deserved it. Of course I didn't surrender the system. Needless to say, this was one of the reasons I did not hang around BB for much longer. Sheer stupidity. A grown man trying to fight a 19-year-old who made 8.0 hours for a video game system. Brilliant. Edit, homophones and possessives. Story 13 Worked security at Target for 5 years. For being a store in the rougher part of town, I don't have too many horror stories. The funniest one I like to tell is a couple years ago. I was there early doing crowd control. I would always talk to people in line, try to keep them entertained while they waited in the cold. The first couple in line had been there for about 13 or 14 hours, so we open the store, and we have deals on all sorts of electronics, toys, etc. They get in line and have a shopping cart full of towels that we had on sale for $2. That's it, just towels. They were first in line outside and waited over half a day for 2 towels. When I left after my 12-hour shift, we still had shelves full of these towels, along with tons more in the stockroom. Story 14 I worked at Radio Shack for a year in college. During Black Friday, one of the sale items was a 10 calculator marked down to 5. 2 sweet, elderly women came into the store looking for them. When I told them there was only one left in the display, that was on, it turned into a geriatric version of roller derby without the skates. The one grandma who lost the race called the other one as she was standing in the checkout line, gripping her 5 prize. I always imagined some little kid opening presents on Christmas morning and getting this stupid 5 calculator, not really wanting it and having no clue about the backstory behind it, as his grandma, sipping her tea, looks on with a triumphant gleam in her eye. Story 15 When I worked at Sam's Club, during the madness one Black Friday morning, we caught a woman stuffing the inside of her pants with frozen lobster tail. She would unpackage them and throw the trash in a stack of tires that were on display. Story 16 I didn't work at the store, but I was dragged by a friend of mine to Walmart to help him get a TV on Black Friday a few years ago. Let me start by saying that I don't even particularly like crowds. I'm also not a violent person. I had heard lots and lots of Black Friday horror stories, and had done pretty well avoiding them. However, about 6 years ago my friend asked me to help him get a second flat-screen television for his family since, at the time, Walmart had a policy that a single person could only reserve one item before midnight. That sounded pretty alright. I mean, I just walk in and say I want the item. Simple as that. I was wrong, dead wrong. I show up at my local Walmart and there are people everywhere. I live in Tennessee, and everyone is pretty serious about Walmart here. These people though were the worst of the worst. Several of them looked like they hadn't seen daylight since last year's sales. Anyway, I make my way through the crowd of southern fried faces and scoot through to the television section. We are informed that there are only 2 of the televisions that my friend wanted left on the reserve list. Awesome. We tell the woman that we want the televisions, and she just sort of laughs. She then informs me that we have to reach over other people for hours and keep our hands on the televisions that we want. When midnight rolls around, they will unwrap all the items and tell everyone to go, and that is when we could take them. This is where it gets good. We are waiting there for a couple of hours and we start to notice how many people are disappointed that there aren't any more of the TV that we have our hands on. Some women even started to cry. I obviously looked distressed with all the action going on, so two little old women who were next to me told me that it wouldn't be that bad. I would be out of there before I knew it. I smiled and thanked them for their kind words just as it was nearing midnight. The employees removed all the plastic from the displays of boxes and wait for the announcement. The PA system overhead comes on and just says go, then all breaks loose. Apparently, all the people that were disappointed that there weren't enough TVs had a plan. They just rushed over and started pushing people out of the way. They ran to the roped-off other sides of the boxes and were trying to rip them away from other customers who had been waiting in line for hours. Some of them were even succeeding. I was kind of caught up in the moment and was staring at what was going on while being pushed on all sides. My friend grabs my arm and tells me to hurry and get my TV in the cart before everyone starts fighting. Just as I focus back into reality, a woman starts pulling on the other side of my TV box. I mean, she is really pulling it. I just hold on with all my strength and decide to just let them tire themselves out. That's when I noticed two nice elderly ladies beside me. One was on the floor and was being stomped on by several other women trying to get to their televisions. The other was wailing and crying for God to help her. God didn't help her that day, but I sure did. While still holding onto my box with one hand, I reached into the sea of people and grabbed the television that the older women had their eyes on. I grabbed it off the shelf and started screaming for everyone to back up. That's when they started hitting me. Women were clawing my face, pulling my hair, kicking my legs, and doing everything they could possibly do to make me let go of the old lady's television. I wouldn't. On the other hand, literally, several women were on the other side of my original box trying to pull it away from my grip. I yelled out to my friend to help the older women up, who were literally being buried by women falling over themselves trying to rush up to the displays. As soon as they are out of the way, I just pull their television out, put it in the cart, and then grab my original box with both hands. I may not be a violent man, but I wasn't about to lose the original TV that I came in for. I got a great grip on the box and just pushed it towards all the women who were pulling on it. This caused them to all just fall in a big comedic pile on the floor. I made my escape from the sea of ladies, and proceeded to the checkout counters. Now don't get me wrong folks, it was awful and I have never gone back to a Black Friday since. I was covered in cuts and bruises, but it was all worth it just to see the look on those two ladies' faces. They were so grateful that I helped them get that television. It was apparently a gift for one of the women's grandson. She informed me that she didn't have the money to get one that wasn't on sale price, and had brought her friend to help her get the thing. They were so happy. They were just hugging me and telling me how I saved their Christmas. They immediately offered me what money they had for helping, but I of course denied it. And that is how I saved Christmas and knocked a bunch of women on the floor. Edit, thanks for the gold, stranger. Since my comment is picking up a little steam, I just wanted to take the time to remind everyone to have a great safe holiday season. Things can easily get out of hand with the joys of the holidays, but don't let it bring you down or break your character. No matter where you come from or what you believe, remember the gift of human togetherness this holiday season. We all have a whole lot to be thankful for. Story 17x Best Buy here. 4 Black Fridays at the highest grossing store that day in the company gets you a few wild tales. This one is quick guy tried to shove a Panasonic Blu-ray player into the front of his jeans. He was a rather large man, but dude, it's a Blu-ray player, seriously. Story 18, I previously told this story in another thread on my throwaway. For some reason, edit, don't worry. That throwaway has nothing important on it. I had just undergone shoulder surgery the day prior to Thanksgiving. My boss told me I had better show up, and I liked my job at Circuit City at the time, not for the job but for the coworkers. So I showed up at 5 a.m., just hours post-op. I was there in a shoulder sling, popped a Percocet, and started the day. My job was to handle the computers, so I dealt with the onslaught of people pushing me over to get free CDRS. Literally pushing me over. I fell down on my shoulder after some mother pushed me over. A little kid. No lie, to squelch the pain, I took a Percocet. Around 9 a.m., a man came in wanting to buy a CRT monitor. You know, those big heavy ones. He had a bunch of other items and wanted me to carry the monitor out to his car. I objected, but he started getting upset, so I dragged the monitor with my good arm and put it into a cart. I pushed it out to his car, put the monitor in, and the guy drove away without thanking me. I turned around and bumped into a customer with my bad arm. This sent a discharge of extreme pain running throughout my body. So I went inside and took a Percocet. Flash forward to around 11 a.m. Customers look like blurs and I find myself drooling a little bit. A customer comes up and asks where he can find the monster cable. I found the idea of a monster cable to be hilarious, so I laughed maniacally in his face. He backed away and asked another employee. I then proceed sit on a computer box and tell stories about the adventures of Black Fridays of yore. Customers guarded their children. Nobody bothered me. This went on for a good 10 minutes in real time, which felt like 3 hours to me. The manager in my department walked over to me, grabbed my good arm, and escorted me out of the building. She looked at me and said, "I'll see you tomorrow at 8. I missed my next shift. TLDR, my Black Friday ended early thanks to some Percocet. Story 19, I think it was around Black Friday 2004, and I was a cart pusher at a Walmart. In this particular year, Walmart offered a plasma TV at an extremely low price and was the hottest deal of the year. A man showed up the Tuesday before the big sale with a tent, ice coolers, generator, TV, and everything he needed to brave the 3 nights he would be staying over. He continuously talked about being first in line and how he was going to get the plasma TV and how he was hosting the next Super Bowl party, so this was just going to be the best thing ever. Come around Thursday night, I showed up to my shift and he was still there in a jolly mood, thankful he was about to be able to go home and sleep in his own bed. The news came and he did a short interview and explained what he was waiting for, how he was able to get the time off. He was a truck driver and was overall excited over the whole ordeal and prided himself for toughing out the cold. The line for the entrance wrapped around the whole front of the door and about another 300 yards or so past the store, with thousands of people waiting to get in. At 5 a.m., the doors opened and the man goes straight to the plasma TVs to see that they were all gone. What happened? The garden center at the Walmart opened up about 10 seconds before the front doors, and those that came the night before scooped up on all 15 plasma TVs. This guy who had been there since Tuesday afternoon was dumbfounded and argued with management but was stonewalled and told there was nothing that can be done. That guy's Thanksgiving was a bust for sure. Story 20. My first and only Black Friday was my worst. I was 18 and working in digital imaging at Best Buy. To keep the story short and sweet, there was your typical awful 100 laptop people were flipping their over on Black Friday. I saw a mother tell her 10-year-old son to run into the horde of idiots to grab one. Thinking his youth would save him from any harm, I guess. Kid actually manages to wiggle his way through the crowd and grab one, only to be picked up under the arms by a 20-year-old and, no joke, thrown backwards into a display of flash drives. The 20-year-old grabs the laptop from the kid and runs like the wind. Kid cries. The mom, hearing her son cry but unable to see him, proceeds to flip her. She looks at us at the cash registers like we are responsible and starts to scream at us to call the cops. IDK what to think about the whole ordeal. Of course the 20-year-old is and is probably the worst person in this story, but the mom is what always agitated me. What is God's name was she thinking bringing her kid to a 4 a.m. cluster, in hopes his bright-eyed cheerful face would protect him from a typical Black Friday madhouse? The story does have a happy ending. I got the out of retail and never had to experience another one of those ever again. What happened to the mom and son and the other guy? If I know, I worked for GameStop for a long time as a manager and never really had anything bad happen. Some disappointment, but nothing like the YouTube videos of Walmart or Best Buy. Nearing Christmas, however, I do remember not having something and being blamed for ruining Christmas. Edit. I would also like to add that I paid for all the employees' lunch on Black Friday. I usually had something catered. One year, I had the Chic Filet manager cater my food for the COD launch. He gave us all lunch for free for Black Friday. That was the last Black Friday I worked and it was awesome. Story 21. I used to work at Victoria's Secret Pink, and my first Black Friday, I was at the front of the store. People were already outside waiting to get in at midnight. When the foods lifted, I was pushed backwards and almost fell to the ground. Luckily I fell on our launch table. I climbed the table and stayed up there throwing customers hoodies and yoga pants. It was fun yelling green hoodie, size small, who wants it, and everyone jumping and yelling for it. Also, a girl fainted and I had to push people from walking all over her. Story 22. Never worked retail, but I delivered to a lot of retail stores. Trucker showed up with a delivery at a Wally World about 8 a.m. on Black Friday, and couldn't even back into the dock. It's like my rig giving off an aroma that attracts fat dumpy housefrows. Turns out they had some ridiculous price on flat screen TVs and had run out. The store manager had told them there were more coming in on the next truck that morning. So naturally, they saw me and thought they'd be allowed to just grab them off the truck. Man, were they disappointed when they saw I had a trailer full of brand new shopping carts. Story 23. I saw an old woman crying her eyes out because her granddaughter stole $850 from her purse the morning of Black Friday. She had her shopping route mapped out. What stores to hit for what sale, when and where. She was buying for everyone in the family. Your typical sweet grandmother that everyone loves. The only reason I know this is because I was a druggie at the time and my running partner girlfriend someone to get high with and said she had a great way to make money. When I went there to pick her up and saw her gram crying, I knew what was up. We rushed to my car, already called the dealer, and I started backing down the driveway. I said, "Let me see the money, I don't believe you," before she would tell me one thing and then give half the money knowing I would cover the other half. I walked back in the house and gave the money back to her grandmother, and apologized, carefully explaining what we did wasn't right, but we were drug addicts, so at the time it made sense. She looked at me the way a hunter looks at its prey right before it does the mercy shot to finish the job. She said, "Get help." And I did. The girl didn't need help and quickly fell flat on her face and got Hep C and I think HIV shortly after leaving me for a real man. She loved sharing needles. I'm currently 2 years sober and this Black Friday will be 3. TLDR, granddaughter robs grandmom, so we have drug money. Guilt overwhelmed me and I gave the money back and got clean. Stay away from heroin kids and spineless bitchy women who are literally insane. Story 24. I haven't told this story in a while, so I worked for Mrs. Fields Cookies in my local mall during Black Friday back when I was in high school. Our manager got called to a store in a different city because a manager had very severely hurt themselves melting chocolate for their chocolate-dipped cookies. I end up having to work for the majority of the day with an equally lazy buddy of mine slinging cookies and taking orders for cookie cakes while the mall was packed. Around 4 in the afternoon and about 1,600 in sales, a gentleman in a button-down Mrs. Fields Cookies shirt comes to our counter telling us he had to do a midday drop for us for whatever money we had taken in the day. I let him in the back. He tinkers for a second on the computer and ends up taking our deposits, so now it's an hour before closing time. My boss is now back to our location to help us close. He starts going through our paperwork and money and realizes we are about $1,600 short. I explained to him that Mr. So-and-so came down to our location to do a midday drop since he didn't work. He told me Mr. So-and-so doesn't exist and calls the corporate office. It turned out this guy had gone to over a dozen Mrs. Fields in the area and robbed over $10K worth of money. They never figured out who it was. I ended up being fired over it with my buddy. We stole a giant cookie cake as compensation. Worth it. TLDR, I worked for a Mrs. Fields that got robbed midday Black Friday by a master criminal. Story 25. Not much of a story. Just working 18 hours straight. I always have 2 jobs during holiday. When you're full of tryptophan is a nightmare in itself. People have thrown things at me, ripped product intended for other customers out of my hands, stolen broken things, relieved themselves in fitting rooms, puked, and fainted while in stores I have worked in. On the bright side, I always wear a pedometer and I can easily walk 8 to 10 miles on Black Friday, so I feel a little more justified when I have 6 servings of stuffing the day before. Story 26. Not exactly a horror story like you're looking for, but still related. I used to work at Best Buy. On Black Friday I worked a 12-hour shift at a register the whole day. 12 hours of constant repetition became a blur. When I got home and went to bed, I couldn't sleep because every time I fell asleep I would have a nightmare that was essentially me thinking, I need to get back to my register, and then semi-consciously walking around my room trying to find it. I got maybe 3 hours of sleep after a 12-hour shift. It was awful. Story 27. I was working a register at a Circuit City. Was typically customer service, but there was no chance we were returning anything on Black Friday, and there were plenty of managers on hand for upset customers, and apparently some idiot ran into a transformer nearby and took out the power to the whole retail block. Everyone who had items they wanted to purchase, several hundred people, had to just sit down and chill out for around an hour and a half while we waited for the power to return. The funny part to me was how many people asked me, often in a very exasperated tone, when's the power coming back on? Mind you, I was working at an isolated register, hadn't left or been visited by any other employees as I was surrounded by customers, and the people asking had been sitting next to me the entire time. I understand I was wearing a uniform, but come on people, muster up a little common sense. Also, I had a bin beneath my counter where I kept things that people had decided they didn't want to buy. One of the hot items that year was USB thumb drives for like $5. I had someone spot a few in my bin and asked if they could have them, so I looked down to grab a couple, and came back up to around 10 hands outstretched. I was really worried there was going to be an issue over who asked first. I just said sorry, but someone's going to be upset no matter what I do, and quickly shoved the drives into random hands. Luckily no one gave me a hard time or fought with each other. I am very glad I don't have to work that 4 a.m. to midnight shift ever again, and I have nothing but sympathy and respect for all of you still working in the trenches of retail. Stay safe out there this week. Edit. Yes, I really intended to write 4 a.m. to midnight 0400 to 2400. It was a 20-hour day, and it sucked. One of the stupid policies at Circuit City was that customer service associates, not managers, were charged with counting the money at the end of the day every day, all year. Unfortunately, because of the volume on Black Friday, the registers had to be cashed out several times that day, and then all of it tabulated at the end of the night, and it required all of us to do it, or else one guy would be stuck counting bills until well into the next day. Story 28. I was a GameStop worker when the Wii came out. The second we unlocked the doors, was a riot. People were fighting one another, swearing, crying, just about everything. People were so desperate. When people managed to get one, somebody would throw the other person to the ground and buy it. Story 29. This is not a horror story, but it did happen early on Black Friday. In 2008 my son and I stood all night outside Best Buy so he could get a deal on a gaming console. They are really organized and they passed out papers to people for the doorbusters. They let those in the front of the line pick first. We were 12 back or so. They had laptops for $299, $499, $699, etc., as well as other great prices. So they get 5 to 6 people past us, and a lady asks for the $299 laptop, and the clerk says they only have the $499 and up laptops left. Lady starts to cry, says she's starting night school and can't afford the $499 laptop, and that she waited all night, which she had because she got there shortly after we did. A complete stranger from in front of us in the line walks over to her and says, "I knew I brought so much cash for a reason," and then peeled off $200 and handed it to her and walked back to his spot. People were losing it. Do you know him? Nope. Did you see that? A guy gave that woman $200. Coolest thing I've ever witnessed at Christmas. Story 30. Someone punched a security guard in the face because he thought he was a customer skipping to the front of the line. He was just walking in the door to start his shift. So yeah, my town has those kind of people in it. Story 31. I used to work for a large shoe store in an internationally famous outlet. It was only me and one other person working the clearance section. None of the shoes are held out on the floor. They're all stored in the back of the store. It was 12 hours of holding shoes between my legs, the crooks of my arms, one between my head and shoulder, frantically calling for sizes into a mic, while half of my customers and I could not communicate due to language barriers. Story 32. I was on service desk at Toys R Us Babies R Us last year, and that meant that I would handle checkout overflow and any messed up transactions from that day. So, if a cashier double scanned something or a similar mistake was made that required a return to be run through the system, I would take care of it. We were not accepting any other forms of returns that day due to the high volume of customer traffic, and this was posted all over the place. The amount of people coming to the store for the sole purpose of returning an item was staggering. They didn't want to buy or exchange anything. They only came in to do a return and then leave. One lady in particular, when told that I could not return her item for her since it was not purchased that day, said, "I want to talk to somebody else. Get your manager." So, I get the next person above me who was closest to my register. He tells her the same thing. She asks for somebody else. This woman held up my register for almost 30 minutes as we had to go through each and every supervisor manager until she reached the assistant manager and started yelling for her to call the store manager, who was home asleep after working something like 20 hours already. The assistant manager finally just did the return to make her leave, but the fact that she was so stubborn about it was infuriating. Also, putting the store back together after we closed was an absolute nightmare. People had hidden items in shelves you wouldn't think they could reach. Stuff was all over the floor, garbage everywhere, etc. TLDR, customers could refuse to accept return policy for the day and left the store in complete shambles.